Sagrada. This is a game that I've been wanting to play for a while. People have been sharing pictures of this game online for quite a while. I keep seeing them on Facebook and Twitter. I'm like, darn, how did you get that game? Because as far as I know, it wasn't released yet. I saw that they had copies on Gen Con 2017. I ran to the booth of the publisher to get one, and by the time I got there, it was sold out already. So what I did was to order a copy, and finally my copy arrived. I've been playing it last week. I played with the adult friends. I played it with my 7-year-old daughter. Everybody loves this game. I can already tell you my endorsement will be very enthusiastic. This is a great game, and I'm glad that I finally got to play it. In this game, you allegedly are building stained glass windows for the Sagrada Familia. It's a fairly abstract game, but it has very beautiful components, and also the game is aesthetically pleasing, not just at the level of the components, but the level of the composition. The rules will make you place the components in patterns that, as you will see, will be very aesthetically satisfying. Each player uses a board such as this one. The top is not strictly necessary, but it looks great. This is the play area that you really want to look at. Each player receives 2 of these cards randomly at the beginning of the game. Each card is double-sided, so you have 4 patterns to choose from. And the patterns are not all the same. They have different levels of difficulty as indicated by the number of dots here at the bottom. The more dots, the harder is the pattern. And suppose I decide to play this pattern here. To balance the fact that some patterns are harder, when you select one, you take a number of tokens from this bag equal to the number of dots that you have there. So here, for example, I have 5 tokens, and during the game you can use these tokens to perform special actions. So the harder the pattern, the more extra tools you have to complete it. Once you select your pattern, you slide it inside your board here. How neat is this? And voila. Now, during the game, you will place dice in these windows here, and you can play any die, any color, any number in areas with a white background, but only dice with a matching number in areas with a number, and dice with a matching color in areas that have a color in the background. Also, each player receives a card from the stack. You shuffle it, and then you give each card face down to a player. That indicates a color that will score for that player at the end of the game. At the end of the game, you will be able to score the sum of the values on the purple dice that you have on your board. It could be red dice, it could be yellow. But the secret objective that you have lets you score the pips, each point indicated on a die in your play area at the end of the game. There are also public objectives. They come from the stack. You shuffle it and you draw 3 randomly face up, and these will indicate how players can score during the game. Well, one of the ways. The other one is the private objective. For example, if these are the 3 cards that we have this turn, you're gonna score a number of points equal to the diagonally adjacent dice that have the same color. Pretty much like indicated here. If I had this pattern at the end of the game, I'll score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points because of this objective here. If this is in play as a public objective, you're gonna score 6 points for each row that you have in which you have no dice of the same color. It's 2 points for each set of 3 and 4 anywhere, 5 points for rows with no repeated values, and so on and so forth. So there will be 3 of such cards available for players to take into account. Finally, something else that we can use during the game, more resources, tools. We shuffle these cards and we place 3 cards face up during the game, at the beginning of the game. You ignore this die here, this symbol here on the top left corner. It is only used during the solo variant, not during the multiplayer game. And the solo variant, by the way, is pretty fun. It's surprisingly fun and also pretty tough. These tools will be available. They have different effects. If you want, you can pause and read what the effect is during the game. What you can do is to use these effects by spending one of these tokens. So you spend a token and say, I'm going to use that effect. I'm going to spend another token, use that effect. That's how it is. Now, the core of the game revolves around dice, and you have this nice bag full of beautiful, shiny dice. There's 90 of them, and that's quite impressive. At the beginning of each turn, a player takes the bag and draws and rolls a number of dice equal to 2 times the number of players plus 1. So with 2 players, 5 dice. With 3 players, 7 dice. Suppose that we have 3 players, so we draw 7. I have 4 here. 1, 2, 3 more. We roll them. And then starting with the first player can take can take a die and place it on their board, and or take an action. Then the next player will go, the next player will go, and then each player takes a second turn in opposite order. So third player, second player, first player. That means, and since most of what you will be doing is to take dice from the pool, that if the first player, you're gonna pick first and last, second player, second, and second to last, and so on and so forth. So when I take a die, I place it on my board. Again, remember the restriction that I mentioned you that has to do with the background. There's also another type of restriction here, 4 with 4. That's good. All right. Another restriction is that I cannot place, well, actually, before we talk about that, the first die that you place has to be on the edge of the board. Other dice have to be adjacent to that one, and they have to be adjacent orthogonally or diagonally. Diagonally is perfectly legal. I have a 5 here, and for example, I do that, and that is connected. But right now, I wouldn't be able to play a die there because it wouldn't be connected with my initial formation. But maybe I want to play this instead, and I have this die, so I can put it here. Again, perfectly legal. Restriction. You have to follow the instructions on the background. Also, you cannot place 2 dice orthogonally if they have the same value. This purple here may match the background, but I cannot place it there because it's orthogonally adjacent to another 5. And this green here, I may place it here because it is white background, but I cannot actually place it there because now I have 2 dice that are orthogonal that have the same color. So a diagonal is okay, but orthogonally you cannot have 2 dice next to each other that have the same color or the same value. That means, for example, that this would not be a good idea to place a 5 here, because then I cannot place any die here, because if I want to place a die here, it has to be a 5, and I place one adjacent there, which is a 5, so I cannot place anything in there. But I could do this, and then maybe I could do this, and so on and so forth. But no more than 2 dice per turn. Since the number of dice is twice the players plus 1, and each player usually will take 2 dice, there will be at least 1 die left over. It can be more if players have passed. The die that is left over after each player took 2 turns is placed on the turn track, so that also is a good reminder of how many turns players have played and how many are still there. Maybe in a turn we have more than 1 die that has been left behind because a player passed or something. And there also, what is also interesting is that there are game effects that allow you to swap dice from the pool of available dice to the turn track. So that is also why the turn track is very important. You continue like this. Drafting dice from the bag, rolling them, getting them and placing them on your board, following all of the restrictions, using tools occasionally, trying to place as many dice as possible and to fulfill as many public objectives as possible, and to get a lot of high values in the color of your secret objective. Continue like this until the end of the 10th round. The game is over. Players score points from the public objectives, from their secret objective. Each token that they still have is worth 1 point at the end of the game, and at that point the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. Sagrada is a spectacular game. It looks amazing and gameplay is just as amazing. I mean, it looks so great that almost I was thinking, gameplay is not so good. I have all of these nice dice. I'll do something with them. But then gameplay is absolutely so fun. It's so simple to learn and yet so interesting, so full of nice puzzles, nice decisions that you have to make. You will start by thinking about your display, of course. That's your main focus of attention, what you're trying to maximize, try to get certain dice without committing too much to certain situations that will be hard to get out of. If I have a spot in the middle, maybe it's a certain color, and I surround it with dice with a lot of values, say 1, 3, 5, and 4. Now there aren't many dice that I can place in there. So if I could place 4 ones, that would be great, or 4 twos, but of course a lot of other considerations. So there are a lot of different things that you have to take into account as you're filling your display. Try to fill out the mandated spaces if you can, and leave the blank spaces for later, so that whatever you get in the late game, you can still fill it, you can still fit it in, or you have better chances of doing so. And this is interesting enough. On top of that, you probably will start looking at other people's displays and you'll start realizing, look how my friend is in love with blue all of a sudden. I guess that is their objective. And that it's important. This is important because those secret objectives can be very powerful. You may even have the impression that they are too swingy, that if I get 3 6s in my color, that gives me 18 points. That's a huge bonus, may even win me the game. And from time to time it might happen, but I don't think that that will be enough of a factor to swing the game in a direction rather than another in many games. If the players know what they're doing, if the players are aware of that, then as soon as I get a sense of why you're getting a 6 in that thing, which may not be ideal for you or maybe good enough, then I want to get 5s and 6s in that color if it's possible for me. I want to try to take them from you. So when players are aware of that, I don't think that that is much of a problem at all. And actually I like the added challenge that comes precisely from that. If I do my thing and I ignore you, I may be in a good position, but I may be overlooking ways of preventing your success that could be available to me otherwise. So I like the challenge that you have, you and the dice, and then also interacting with other players. Again, what I take is also related to what I leave on the table. So our 2 things may be more or less equal to me. Then I decide to take one just because the one that I leave to you is not nearly as appealing to you. It is a game that, although you're not attacking each other with mortars, platoons, or air bombardment, has a lot of indirect, or can have a lot of indirect interaction. And the problem that probably you're thinking about, well, how about analysis paralysis? That is always possible with the wrong people and with games that have perfect information, but you do not have 20 options to take into account every round. The number of dice that you have is that one, and if you are the 3rd or the 4th player, by then you have a small number of dice and you're going to take 2, so that also relieves the pressure a little bit. So the pool of options that you have to consider is not large, and that helps with analysis paralysis, or say helps prevent analysis paralysis, but it is still large enough that it is interesting to get to try to solve the puzzle. In the later game, when you're committed to certain patterns and you do not have many open options, then analysis paralysis is almost impossible when you realize that there is only one die that you can fit. You can still choose to pass because maybe that fits, but not as beautiful as you would want it to be. You're still hoping that another die may fit better and create other opportunities, but still, as the game progresses and opportunities and the range of opportunities narrows, again, you have fewer choices that you can make, and that again helps with preventing analysis paralysis. But yet at the same time, the game doesn't feel trivial, doesn't feel like on autopilot. You still have to make those decisions, which are still very important and very interesting. And at the end, if you get stuck at 3 turns from the end, you realize that it's hard to place almost anything. Well, you're only one person to blame, and he's not your best friend unless you consider yourself to be your best friend. Because, of course, that is the outcome of the decisions that you made early on in the game. If you find yourself without decisions to make, then, well, you need to reconsider your strategy. I don't think it is something that is intrinsic to the design. I like the fact that the game, again, can be taken at different levels, with different levels of commitment. It can be like a beer and pretzel games. You're playing with your Uncle John that has come to visit, and you're drinking pretzels and eating beer, or approaching those two food things in the opposite way. And you're just chatting and you're placing dice there. You're playing suboptimally, but the game will still work. The game is still happening as opposed to a complicated game, so the moving parts that you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You can play it as just that casually. Again, many of you are probably horrified by me saying this, but hey, it is your game. You bought it, use it any way you want. And if you want to use it casually, we're thinking about something else and updating your Facebook, that is your prerogative. You can do so. But you can take the game very seriously, play it with players that take it just as seriously, and the game then that exudes with depth and with pleasant puzzles to solve. That is, I would almost say you can play as casual, almost as hardcore as you want it to be. You can play with a vast range of people, again, with completely casual gamers, with non-gamers at all, with very serious adult players, with young folks. I played it with my 7-year-old daughter Amelia. She's spectacular. I can't win against her to save my life. That she's very good at this game. Also, I must say, I don't have the sense that I'm particularly good, because I lose against her and I lose against my adult friends. But maybe a testament to how good this game is that I always want to play it more, although I seem to lose almost every time. It is just so fun. The mental flow that it gets me into is absolutely captivating. The beauty of interacting with these components, the patterns that emerge are just so visually pleasant. And the rules, of course, will encourage you to create certain patterns, precisely because the colors cannot be orthogonally adjacent. Then you, of course, spread the colors around in nice patterns with a little variety, a lot of alternating colors. It's beautiful. To me, that's one of those cases where the rules of the game can also work as an aesthetic principle, as almost as a compositional blueprint that places the components on the board in certain patterns that, on top of creating interesting gameplay decisions, also result in pleasing arrangements of components. It's a game that plays beautifully, that is beautiful, that you can play with a ton of people. To me, this is a new gateway classic. I think that in no time at all, this will be up there on the Olympus of the gateway games, together with Pandemic, Ticket to Ride, Carcassonne, Catan. And definitely I would play this one any night of the week over Catan. Ticket to Ride I played as a gateway game. This one I could play as a gateway game. I can play it with serious committed gamers. I can play it anytime, because it is just so darn fun, so darn beautiful and rewarding. Very satisfying. Sagrada, highly recommended, in my opinion, a new modern classic in the making.